going to start with Rachel here. I don't know what corner she's in for everybody else, but for me, she's like right there. Um, you can see her little name there. Rachel, the
Brady
first,
Bunch style, huh?
yeah, 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 exactly. Rachel, the first question that I have for you is, let's just start at the very beginning. What is the Book of Business Team, and what inspired the creation of the Book of Business Team?
I love that question because it really does show like the history and like the journey that this whole division has kind of taken place with. But initially, it started off with literally just looking at contracts, especially like people who had downlines or maybe they were working on a succession plan, things like that, who were looking to transfer business. And a lot of times we were catching a lot of business that was maybe not set up correctly. Maybe it was where they didn't quite own their business. Maybe it was the downlines they thought they had contracted under them. They actually weren't, and they were writing business maybe direct with the carrier. So it was a lot of literally just untangling this messy yarn ball of like, making sure that we understood and like lining everything up and creating this beautiful tapestry of like, okay, everything's set up the way it should be now. And that literally started kind of a little passion project of like just making sure that like we understood the transfer processes, that we understood book of business changes, that we understood the why behind setting yourself up correct. It literally was just going back to the basics of like we help our agents build and grow all day long, but we're not actually supporting them and creating a foundation. So you wouldn't start building the walls to a house without laying the concrete foundation. So we started going back to the basics of like, okay, let's help our agents start and grow and end in the right way so that it's the right direction. So we actually went back to a lot of our agents and started looking through like individual or corp, and that's one of the most basic things that you can do to set yourself up for the future, whether it's acquisition, whether you're preparing for maybe a family member to take over, maybe you even if something were to happen to you, it just helps basically protect those clients and make sure that they're not orphaned to the carriers, and you're keeping those promises with them. So it became a huge passion project, and this group of women on here, we've all kind of been a part of it. We started this, I think, 7 years ago, and it's just turned into this really well-oiled machine now where like when we talk to a person, it's everyone's kind of unique and different, and we're really just trying to dig into your business model, your style, and your end goals, whether it is acquisition, setting yourself up to sell down the road, making sure downlines are set up correctly, things like that. So we're building that, concrete foundation so that you can build the walls up, you can build the roof, you can get everything set up so that if anything were to happen to you, or if you want to go in acquisition growth mode, which honestly, we're seeing a lot of that, especially with a lot of the proposed final rule changes, a lot more compliance issues, certifications getting a little bit more strenuous. We're seeing a lot more people stepping out and others acquiring that business. So lots of different directions you can go, but essentially whatever direction, wherever you are in your journey with being a business owner, whether you're first starting off, you're in growth mode, you're in acquisition mode, or you're ending, like that's where that passion came from, was just making sure the foundation was there.
I love that. I love how, well, at Senior Marketing Specialists, like we talk a lot about how we want to be able to help our agents from, they just printed off their license all the way through. And I love that this Book of Business Team makes a priority of it, kind of gets in the weeds of little things, and that maybe agents think about, but not like too much, because, this isn't making them money, but it's like, hey, this is something that might save, like save your business if you're trying to transition out or later down the road and you're not thinking about that right now. So I absolutely love that we have this team that's able to support agents in ways that they don't even realize that they needed to be supported. So I absolutely love that. So kind of speaking of saving agents maybe from issues later down the road, Kayla, I want to transition over to you. So what are some common issues that you see with agents who don't consider how they should set up their business before it gets to a point that gets a little messy?
I mean, I could probably talk about like common issues for hours about, setting up your or mistakes that you make whenever you're setting up your business. You're new, right? You're trying to figure things out. But I can think of two things that have made the most impact on me that I see over and over and over again, and I think really shaped my ideas around planning for the future of your business. And that's one, legally naming your successor. And then two, setting your business up in a way that someone else can step in and take over your business if something were to happen to you. I think that, there's a common misconception that if you just communicate your business plans with your family members, that they are able to continue collecting your renewals and keep those commission flowing. And that's not always the case. Renewals most of the time, they only last for so long, especially when we're thinking about like Medicare Advantage renewals. They last as long as your certifications do, right? And carriers have their own individual unique requirements for how they handle like the death of an agent, and typically that is some form of legal documentation. It is transferring the business to an active and appointed licensed agent, so to keep those commissions flowing. I just have spent a ton of time on the phone with agents or with spouses, having to watch the emotional impact that having their family member not have their business set up correctly has on that person. They're grieving, and then they're having to deal with all of the stress of your business that they probably don't understand because they may not be in insurance, and it's a whole different game, right? Insurance is. And it's such a hard conversation to have, to explain to someone that I can't save their business, that their spouse has worked for years and years of their life to build this business, to build their legacy, and all of a sudden they're losing half of their income because the business was not set up correctly. And it's a heartbreaking conversation to have, especially when there are steps that you can take to prevent that early on in the game. And one of the most important things that you can do is set up your business as a corporation and have a succession planning conversation with your attorney. Make sure your attorney knows what your succession plan is and share that plan with your family members. It protects your business, it protects your income. I mean, when you have a corporation and you communicate your succession plan to your attorney and to your loved ones, you're handing them a plan of action. You're giving them something to do. If something happens to you, they'll know who to call, they'll know what to do, so they can focus on their family, they can focus on other things. They're not worrying about your business, and they're not worrying about your income. And that's just what I see over and over again. I think, those emotional conversations that you have with people where you're having to explain how their business is set up, or, the business that they're losing, you could easily protect that by incorporating.
So
I'd say
Kayla,
it's really hard too when you first start. Sorry, Sadie. I was gonna say when you're in business, you're just like running, you want to go a million miles per hour, and then to take a step back and like look at like you're an agent, but you're also a business owner. So like thinking through like what that next step is. I think that's the hardest part is like it is taking paperwork and it is taking time to like go back and untangle everything. But I think if you're looking in the future, that's totally worth it. And I think Kayla, you and I have seen that a lot when we first have that initial conversation, and then Natalie works really, really closely with everyone once they say yes, let's do this. So it's an interesting uh, situation that we run into a lot.
Yeah, and I was going to touch on like we want to look at people holistically, right? We don't want to just help them in the beginning, and then when they get to, nearing the end of retirement, we want to be there to support that as well. But we can only do that if you are contracted in the right way. So we want to make sure that going forward, that you don't have to deal with those situations. We've seen really sad situations where someone loses a spouse, and then they're grieving, they're going through all those processes, and then on top of that they're trying to become a licensed insurance agent. So we've seen every type of situation, and so what we're trying to do is we're trying to prepare you all for your future so that we can ensure you're set up correctly. So speaking from the contracting side of things, I mean, agents tell me all the time they hate doing paperwork, and I totally reason with them on that. I completely understand it. It's not fun. Your job every day is to go out and write business, but our job is also to help you with those things. So we never want you to feel like you're alone in that. We have a whole contracting team that loves to help, do paperwork, help you walk through the paperwork so that we can set you up correctly. So you guys can always lean on us. We're always happy to do that, but I'm excited because I'm glad that we're looking at things holistically. So I think that's, for me, the biggest thing that Book of Business has done for us is helping agents from the start to the very end, whatever that end looks like for them.
I would even say we run into that often with so many agents have purchased other businesses and then they're like, hey, I bought this. And then when we actually look at it, we're like, well, you're not set up to buy it, one. And two, you didn't buy it because that person that you bought it from didn't actually own their own business. So like that's another thing that we help a lot with, because like that person may have been set up as an individual or even an LOA. We've seen that so many times. So if you are thinking about buying, acquiring, selling, even just setting yourself up for the future, or something, like we always say, if you get hit by a bus, because hopefully you never do, but if that were to happen, then like are you going to keep your promises to your clients? Are you going to be able to pass commissions and renewals along? And is someone able to step in and service everyone? So it's like owning the clients, servicing the clients, and then keeping promises. I think that's what our end goal is.
I think there's a huge difference in, you kind of touched on it, Rachel, when you purchase, we've seen cases where agents have purchased a book of business that they could never service. There's a difference between contractually owning business and then owning that business in the eyes of the carrier. Just each carrier has their own process for how they handle those business transfers. So we want to look at your contracts. We want to look at the seller's contracts. We want to look at levels. We want to, look at how they have their client files stored, how their digital data is. We're looking at so many different things to ensure that when you're paying for business that you're buying, you actually can service those policies.
Love it. Awesome. Okay, Natalie, we're going to jump over to you. I think this is a really great transition because now I kind of want to talk about, so we've talked a lot about like some horror stories, some things that can happen if you aren't set up the correct way, but still there are going to be some agents out there that might push back a little bit, might not see the importance in it, or even might feel like, yes, I'll get to that, but like not today. What are some reasons that people can be hesitant, are hesitant sometimes to incorporate their business, and kind of go in a little bit about why we see such an importance in it, which I know we've touched on a little bit, but yeah, diving more into
Sure.
it.
Yeah. So I work in contracting, so I definitely see the side of things where that is extra work and I just don't want to do it. And I completely understand that. But we always want to push to have you set up that agency because, like, all these women have said, it is really important to set yourself up for the future. So some of the main, I'd say the main thing that I hear more than anything is I write business in a lot of states and I don't want to have to get agency licenses in every one of those states. And I completely understand. I know that sometimes those additional fees can add up. But one thing I always like to remind agents is, if you were to lose all of your commissions in the future, what is the difference between paying for those licenses now and losing potentially everything down the road? So I know it isn't fun to have more license renewals that you have to track every year. And you do have to pay a little bit more because you're going to need an individual and an agency license to be able to write as an agency. So that's probably the number one thing that I hear. I completely understand it, but again, sometimes those costs are so little compared to how things can go down the road. So that's the main one that I see. The other one I hear all the time is just like, I don't have time. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to have to go through the process, because you will have to apply and get a tax ID number for an agency. You're going to be setting up that agency contractually. So that does mean you're going to have to do some additional contracts, unfortunately. And I know some agents are like, I don't want to do more contracts. But like I mentioned before, we're here to walk you through that. So we don't ever want you to feel alone in that process. We're always here for questions. We have a great contracting team that loves to help with these types of things. So we just never want you to feel alone in that process. And there's also a few other little things here and there, like you may be required to have an agency bank account. Most carriers are going to require that. So there's going to be that a little, input in the beginning from you. Those additional things are going to be required so that you can at least set up that agency. But I will say most everybody we've worked with that we've helped to incorporate, they start seeing the benefits right away from that. And then on top of that, it's really ensuring things for your future. Like that's the biggest thing I want to touch on is this is something that you can do now to make sure things are set up for your future, for your family. A lot of agents, that kind of what Kayla touched on. If you're contracted as an individual, you're really at risk of losing those renewal commissions. And we've worked with agents, they build a huge book of business in their lifetime, and that's all at risk of being lost if they aren't set up, with their contracts correctly. So I just always encourage people, please call us. Like we're always happy to help. We have a whole team of people that loves doing this. And when I say we love doing it, I really mean it. Like we truly enjoy doing it. We're kind of the main people in this group that we like fixing problems. We like making sure you're set up correctly. It makes us feel good to be able to help you in those situations. So I would say the biggest reasons why you should incorporate is definitely ensuring your commissions, because, we don't want to think about the future. We don't want to think that, you could pass away, become ill, things like that. But at the same time, it's good to plan for those what if type moments in life. And that way you're not making your family have to kind of deal with the messes that get left behind. I just always look at that like, this isn't just about you, it's about, your family as well. Because a lot of times they're the ones who end up having to kind of deal with those issues when someone is sick or passes away. So that's a huge one for us, is just making sure you're able to keep that money flowing through. The other big thing I want to touch on is just the transfer of ownership when you're ready to do that. So not everybody wants to work well into their 80s or 90s. I know some people do, but some people want to retire, and some people maybe they don't have a successor for that business. We do see a lot in Medicare, a lot of family taking over, things like that. But some people don't have that, so they don't have that option. So when you incorporate, you're actually allowing that to be set up. So maybe down the road, you're looking to sell that. So you can actually just wipe your hands of it and say, hey, I'm 65. I want to retire. I want to move on. And you can actually go and sell that business, and you can actually step away and ensure that somebody else is taking care of that for you. And I think that that's a really great option for people who maybe aren't looking at, their son or their daughter taking over their business, because not everybody's lucky enough to have somebody in the family that can come in and say, hey, I want to take this over and run with it. So I like knowing that there's like other options for people in those different type of situations. The other thing that I'll touch just briefly on is, you're protecting your personal assets from potential lawsuits by incorporating. You're kind of separating things out as far as taxes go. I think just that is a huge benefit alone, because that is a separate entity from you as an individual. So I think that's really important to mention. And then if you're somebody who's actually looking to hire employees, have downlines, whatever that might be, you're actually setting yourself up much better to be able to set people up under you if you have an agency set up. So those would be kind of my big, key takeaways. There's a ton of benefits. We could probably go on, all day about the benefits about this, but to me, those are some of the biggest ones that I see that I think are super important for people to know about.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love how you talked about the importance of, hey, maybe tomorrow, if you want to add a downline agent, it would be better for you if you went ahead and set this up, but then also planning for that future. I absolutely love that. You guys, now just based on time, we're going to go ahead and jump into our Q&A portion. So if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the questionnaire box. We do have one right here. Let's see. Let's see. Do you have to be S Corp to be able to sell your business? If you are a 1099, at what point would it make sense to incorporate? When you have a certain number of clients, what was it you said about contracting in different states? Is this a must to be incorporated? And if renewals are insured, there needs to be a licensed agent to be able to take over these renewals if agent passes. There was a lot there. So let me start from the beginning. Do you have to be an S Corp to be able to sell your business? If you're a 1099, at what point would it make sense to incorporate?
There are several different types of corporations. You don't have to be set up as an S Corp to sell your business. You could be a C Corp, you could be an LLC to sell your business. Completely okay. At what point do you start thinking about that? Honestly, from the very beginning. I don't think that you have to have a single policy in order to start getting incorporated.
Honestly,
Yeah,
that's better to start the earlier the better,
immediately.
because you when you do switch over to a corp, when you're getting those 1099s, if you have business on your individual, you'll be getting two 1099s. You'll be getting one for your individual and one for your corporation, until the block that's on the individual is no longer there. So we run into that quite often, where then the tax person is doing a little bit of extra work. So if you can do it from the very beginning when you have very little or a few clients, that's even better. But like, there is no bad time to do it. If you want to do it, like, we would rather you do it sooner than later because of all the reasons we just mentioned.
And you could do it from the very beginning. I will say, from my experience, from what I've seen, we have quite a few agents who actually are brand new agents setting up an agency from the very beginning. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with that, because they must have done their research and they know that they're just going to start out like that from the very beginning. So I would suggest as soon as possible. There is no bad time to incorporate.
Awesome. So another chunk of this question here, they were asking what you guys said about contracting in different states, and do you have to be incorporated in order to, yes, is this a must in order to be incorporated? Sorry.
I will touch on this one just because it's licensing. So the reason why they're going to require that agency license is if, say, you're writing in multiple states as an individual and you want to recontract as your agency, in order for you to keep getting those commissions, you are going to need those agency licenses to match what you had as an individual agent. So I would say that is important. And honestly, that's a huge question we get asked all the time. So if you are planning to incorporate, one of those first steps can be looking at, hey, where am I writing business? If that's 5 states, then I would urge you to go on to nipr.com, go ahead and apply for those agency licenses, get those set up and ready to go, so that when you do want to recontract, that all of that is set up, and then all of your commissions are going to continue paying out to you correctly going forward.
Awesome. And then let's see. If my renewals are insured, does there need to be a licensed agent to be able to take over these renewals if the agent passes?
So Kayla, I feel like you and I can probably answer that one. So it really depends. I think Kayla touched on the fact of renewal commissions versus servicing. So if you are set up with as an individual, those clients are tied to you as an individual. So if it's a Medicare Advantage plan, for example, certifications, all of that is required to continue to get those renewals. We've literally, like, I think we've shared several different stories, but like, had someone diagnosed with cancer right before AEP, failed their certifications because they were undergoing chemo, and lost all that renewal business because they were set up as an individual. They couldn't allow another agent to come in and take that test for them. So that's one example of, why it's important. Even if you think you're healthy, everything's good, you never know when health can come into play. But essentially, yeah, I mean, they can do it. You can get set up as a corporation and have the ability to like take care of yourself regardless of the situation.
It also allows, I'm just thinking about if something happens and an agent were to pass away, it allows your spouse to sell your agency as a whole. They can sell your agency, another agent steps in as principal, and then your spouse is receiving a lump sum that they can live off of, to replace your income.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of times where like someone will pass away and then the clients are looking for a home, so then the renewals start going away because the clients are getting serviced by another agent because they find another agent. If you are set up as a corporation, like Kayla said, the servicing status continues on. So someone can step in, they can continue to service, continue to get paid, and the retention is there. Versus if you're set up as an individual, med sup commissions may continue to your bank account as long as that bank account is open, because they're not going to be checking to see if your licenses are renewing, anything like that typically. But there is a life cycle with med sups. They only last usually 7 years before your commissions are gone. So if servicing status isn't there, and there's no agent tied to that, they're orphaned to the carrier, you're looking at, that business kind of becoming a melting ice cube where, people are dissipating and getting picked up by other agents and things like that. So being a corporation allows you to sell your business, someone can take over servicing, and you can keep those promises that you've made. So like we said, there's the money side, the commissions, and then there's the servicing side, and they all kind of go hand in hand.
Perfect. Okay, let's see. I have an agency LLC. How do I convert it to an S Corp LLC?
That's probably an attorney question, honestly. We would let, honestly, either direction though. I don't know if there's a reason why you'd want to go LLC to S Corp. There's, lots of different tax benefits and things like that from different perspectives, but that would definitely, I would advise you to talk to an attorney on that.
And I'll say on the contracting side of that, it's a pretty easy fix to change tax classification. So once you get those answers from your attorney, you just let us know, hey, I changed my tax classification. We'll have you fill out a new W-9. And contracting wise, that's actually a pretty easy fix from our side of things once you've made a decision on it.
Awesome, love it. Okay, we do have a little bit more of a specific question here. Son works as an agent with me. I am an LLC filing as a C Corp. What does my son need to do?
I think I understand the question. So hopefully if we're not explaining it correct, like feel free to pop more questions into the chat. But you're asking like, because you're wanting your son to take over, it sounds like, if your son can get set up as a corporation licensed agent and match the same states that you have, then that's going to allow you to pass that business very seamlessly over. It's very easy to go corp to corp too. So if your son is also writing himself, you can actually set it up where it's under that same corporation, which gives you commission advantages too, because then all of the business flows to one corporation, which allows us to usually bump commissions based on carrier requirements. But corp to corp is very easy for us to transfer. So if your son would like to create his own business as well under your business, that's phenomenal. We can definitely help make sure everything's aligned correctly.
And I would just add that in the eyes of the carrier, they're looking more at you being incorporated as a whole, not necessarily your tax classification. So it doesn't matter, if you're an S Corp and your son is an LLC, if you want to transfer your business from your agency to his agency, that can still be done because you're both incorporated. It's just corp to corp is how the carrier would look at that.
Awesome. Okay, let's see. If you had a TIN set up but never used it and then decided to set up as a corporation, are there possible tax penalties?
I would say that's an accountant question. You would definitely want to take a look at that, but in terms of like setting it up later, like you're looking at, different 1099s coming in, which is what we were kind of talking about earlier. And the old business that you had written as an individual is going to continue on as an individual. So that business is not protected. Anything moving forward would be.
Awesome.
I don't know if, hopefully that answered the question, I think.
Yeah, of course. We have just a few more questions here, like 2 more. So if you have any lingering questions, throw them in the questionnaire box. Otherwise, we'll ask these and get y'all out of here. But we have a question that is asking, can you sell your book if you are a 1099?
You can, but know that it will be very carrier specific. Whether you sell that book of business, the buyer of your book of business may not be able to service some of your policies. There are some carriers that only allow for business to be transferred corp to corp. And so that's something to keep in mind. If you're thinking about selling your business, you honestly might want to give us a call so that we can look at how you're set up with your contracts, how much business you have, what states you're in, what product lines you have, et cetera. And that gives us a better idea of your specific situation if you can sell that business. There are absolutely some carriers that you can be just regular individual 1099 and sell your business and there's no issues whatsoever. But I think that's more just a unique situation that we'll want to look into with you.
Awesome. Okay, and then let's see. Let's see, do you see agencies being owned by trusts? And is there an advantage to being set up that way?
I can probably speak to that. So yeah, you would definitely want to, that's the best thing to do is not only have your corporation set up, have it licensed correctly with the carriers, but also talk to your attorney about setting up. Usually a trust is typically a little bit better than a will because it'll go into a lot more detail about who owns it and allows for a little, so that's obviously that's the legal side, and we were talking about the legal side and the contract side. Our wheelhouse is the contract side and how the carriers look at each contract and how everything's set up. But yeah, definitely talking to an attorney for that and getting advice. But I would say a trust is usually the better way to go. So yeah, that's why I like it all goes hand in hand. You definitely need a good attorney, a good financial planner who can help, or taxes, financial. If they're an accountant, that's fine as long as they can advise you on that. And then you've got us for the carrier side, which would be how the carriers view the contracts, how they view ownership, and how they view servicing status. So we can help with that side, and then having an attorney or a really good accountant is going to be very, very, very helpful in all of this conversation.
Awesome. Okay, the last question that I have for you guys before we get out of here, if someone has questions like this, or they have questions of what's an attorney question, what's a you guys answer or question, what's an accountant question, or just wants to get the ball rolling, wants to get incorporated, all that sort of stuff. How do you suggest that they get set up with the Book of Business team? What is kind of the process of from them calling in?
The best thing you could do is call the main line, tell them what you're calling about, and you need to talk to someone on the Book of Business team. More than likely, it'll be me taking your call. You and I will start a conversation, but then we can look into your unique situation, then we can go from there. I know everybody says there's no such thing as a stupid question, but there's really not. There's no such thing as a stupid question. If you're not sure if it's a question for us, your attorney, or your financial planner, just ask us anyway, and we'll be happy to tell you the best person to reach out to for that, or if I might have extra resources that I can share with you. I think we just getting the conversation started and asking those questions is the best first step that you could take.
Awesome, you guys. Okay, well, those are the questions that we have for right now. I know that I did see a question farther up asking about more information on this. Today was recorded. We'll throw this follow-up email on our YouTube page, also put it in a follow-up email that will have some extra information as well, maybe some resources. But thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you, ladies, for being here and chit-chatting about this. I know that this is a big part of your job, but it's just one thing that you guys do. So thank you so much for taking time out to come speak on this. But do you guys have anything else to add before we get out of here?
I would say, like, if you haven't even started and it feels overwhelming, at least letting whoever your caregiver, your beneficiary, like whoever that would be, your spouse, children, just giving them our number so they have someone to call if something were to happen to you. That would be step number one. We talked about a lot of other steps, which I would say that's a good call in, and we can personalize and tailor the situation to you and make sure that we can walk through your customized plan. But yeah, I would say just get our number to whoever your beneficiary is like in case of business emergency, reach out to our number. Reach out to your FMOs.
Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and get out of here. Thank you guys so much. Be looking out for the follow-up email and those follow-up calls, but we'll let you get back to your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.